So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are in the world. Where I am in the world is in Spain, and the front page of this newspaper, Villarreal. Alarm bells ringing. You can see a pretty glum Jude Bellingham and Kylian Mbappe. Marca, the most famous, the best-selling paper, talks about Madrid getting a point, but sufriendo, suffering. And it needs a musical accompaniment, I would say, which is panic on the pitch at Elche, panic on the streets of the Bernabeu, they blunder all themselves. Could life ever be same again? La Liga positions, you slip down, they're wondering to themselves. Okay, that's enough of that. In fact, more than enough of that. But on a week that I want to start by saying God bless Manny, Gary Mountfield, for all the great music he authored, and damn it, that man went too soon. What's wrong with nicking a Manchester melody, that time from the Smiths and Johnny Marr? So let's see who's panicking and who won't back down, because they are unquestionably no clown. All of this rigmarole is about the rampaging Royster-Doyster 2-2 draw down at Elche. And remember, it's only 2 editions of nearly the weekend ago that Pete Jensen, the interceptor, and I brought the Affengruber Elche, Why Don't They Sing That Little Ditty. But this fabulous encounter on Sunday night was a big, pretty, not a little ditty, because irrespective of the league leaders dropping their 4th point in only 2 matches, and now, Champions League included, going 3 without a win, this was high entertainment for anybody who chose to watch it. And if you didn't watch it, that's why Revista de la Liga is here as a service to you. Elche, led by the combative, forthright, sometimes annoying Eder Sarabia, who was Quique Setien's assistant at Barcelona, went toe-to-toe with the league leaders and matched them all through the game. There were 35 shots at goal, shared evenly, and even though only half of them were on target, it still meant that this was a night of Vimto and vodka. End-to-end football, really competitive aggression, ambition from Elche, more evidence that Madrid gifted something special away when they let young Febas go to Elche from their canterano, from their cantera. But on a weekend when President Florentino Perez was using the club's AGM to rant to everybody in a Father Ted Golden Cleric manner, now we come to UEFA, referees, Barcelona, the Premier League, La Liga. There came a moment when I heard drink, feck, girls being yelled from a delegate in the corner. Florentino had let get things any more vituperative, we might have seen him kicking Bishop Brennan, lend to you and me up the arse. But that wasn't to be. Mind you, 423 kilometres southeast, Xabi Alonso's team nearly had their arses kicked instead. The coach went 3 at the back, Trent Alexander right wing back. He dropped Vinicius again and left out Valverde, who hadn't travelled with Uruguay during the international break. Go figure. They trailed 1-0 and then Dean Howson swiveled like a striker off a Bellingham knockdown with his arm for 1-1. Ex-Madrid striker Alvaro knocked in a hopeful shot for 2-1, and then Bellingham equalised after Vinicius trampled on Iñaki Peña's face in the build-up. But both keepers played superbly well and saved it being something like 5-5. Not bad this from promoted Elche. They play nice football with lower resources than the big clubs. And it's a happening place, seeing as Spain beat Georgia there in the previous international window, and just under a fortnight ago, Leo Messi and the world champions Argentina trained there at the Martínez Valero Stadium before heading to play Angola in a friendly. Everything's going on at Elche. La Roja, El Mejor, and Xabi Davidou in the space of a handful of weeks. They're doing something right down there, not bad. Let me leave you with what infamous Madrid-loving columnist Thomas Rabbit Roncero said about the panic on the streets of the Bernabeu. Asked where he was on the panic-ometer right now, Roncero said at 4 out of 10. I want to believe Alonso will turn things around. My point is, I'm not sure he's connecting with the players, because if he is, it would be terrible to see them so listless and lacking in spirit. This is Roncero, still saying, they've only shown their mettle when they've been backed into a corner. I want to believe that at some point Xabi Alonso will reconnect with the players, which I don't think he's doing now. But if what happened today, as of last night, is repeated in Athens against Olympiacos on Wednesday and Montilivi against Girona at the weekend, My panicometer will go to 9.5, not 4. Anyway, to the side which has scored 8 goals in the last 2 league matches, but definitely won't make it 12-3 at Stamford Bridge tomorrow night, and the side which has narrowed a 5-point gap at the top of La Liga down to just 1, Barcelona. So look, when you want to have the perfect party, homecoming or otherwise, it's pretty important to invite the perfect guests. They shouldn't be disruptive, they should behave as expected, and if one of them gets out of order, it should be pretty easy to get him or her out of the celebrations, and they need to know when it's time to go home without a fuss. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Athletic Club from Bilbao. They are a giant of Spanish football, never relegated. They are Champions League quality. In recent years, they have utterly tormented Barcelona at San Mamés, also a neutral territory, but is now 24 years and 30 league visits to the Camp Nou and associated stadia in the Catalan capital since Los Leones roared properly. That is to say, since they beat Barcelona at Barcelona's home. During which time Leganés, Alaves, Girona, Malaga, Mallorca have all pulled that feat off, but not the mighty Athletic, and not this weekend either. It's one of the great anomalies in European football, in my view. Anyway, it's as if Joan Laporta handpicked Athletic for the reopening of the Camp Nou, a year late, mind you. Ernesto Valverde's side missed tackles, gifted the ball to the Blaugrana, shipped 4 goals, saw Oyan Sunset sent off, then traipsed off home to the Basque country, waving goodbye with their tails between their legs. Again, without the ball, they were 4-3-3 Barcelona. Eric Garcia as the single pivot with Olmo and Fermin as the 2 number 8s. And for the first time this season, Barcelona's press was not only consistent, it was important and effective. Athletic couldn't cope. Lewandowski scored the first goal at the new Camp Nou. Who else? Lamine was simply gorgeous to watch. Fermin, just like 2 weeks previously at Celta, was everywhere. Tackling, shooting, intercepting, complaining, feeding teammates with clever passes, scoring and getting Sunset sent off because Sunset kicked him up in the air. With Joan Garcia back in goals, the champions registered their first clean sheet in 2 months. No coincidence, sorry Wojtek Szczesny. There were 46,000 there, blue skies, Rafinha was back in action, it was kind of fairy tale-like. But at Stamford Bridge and back to reality with a bump on Tuesday night, there's a gaping chasm of difference between Athletic and the athleticism of Enzo Maresca's guys. But you have to beat what's in front of you, etc., etc., etc. The story of Real Betis this weekend is a bit metaphysical. A question of who's there and who's not there, to quote Colin Blunstone and the Zombies. The answer to the first question is Francisco Roman Alarcón, yes, you know as Isco. Not only was he there on Sunday afternoon to play his first match in over 100 days, setting up Valentin Gomez for the much-needed equaliser against Girona, a quarter of an hour after coming on, he's also renewed his contract with Los Verde Blancos until 2028, something which was greeted joyously by the Betis fans with a ginormous Isco tifo for the king of the Costa del Sol himself. That's his title. He was born in Arroyo de la Miel, the stream of honey, near Benalmádena. Anyway, to get back to the subject, what do you mean you've forgotten what the subject was? It's about who's there and who's not there. Isco will be available to face the club which kicked him out, sacked him effectively, back a couple of years ago when Betis played Sevilla in one of the most fevered and hostile derbies in all of Europe next weekend. More revenge, sir? Served cold? Well, maybe not. Because the guy who won't be there is Ant. No? Tony? No? Well, it's Anthony. Betis' brilliant Brazilian, who La Liga's viewers nominated as the man of the match against Girona, despite him not scoring, not assisting, and getting sent off. There's no saving on appeal either. His attempted overhead kick, what the Spanish call a McTominay, booted Girona's number 3 right in the face, in the coupon, in the fizzog, and in the boat race, all at the same time. In fact, you could say that Ant decked young Joel so that Roca rolled all over the pitch, whatever. You could, but maybe let's not say that. But Joel Roca got a kick in the face from Anthony, red card from the referee. Girona played really nicely, and if Esprilla wasn't a gormless half-twit, editor's note, he's still just a spindly kid who turned 22 last week, and this uselessness may pass It's just that I bet that it never does. The Colombian could have won the Catalans all 3 points in the closing seconds, but he made an arse of it, and they didn't. Much more of Girona this week because their next opponents are Madrid at Montilivi, their home ground, next weekend. Meantime, I'll leave you with some of the fabulous language which their escapades generated. Marca newspaper reported Girona's goal as coming from Unai serving up a bit of delicatessen thanks to his death pass to Brian Hill. And Diario AS concluded that with a couple of good results in recent weeks, Girona are excavating a tunnel away from the relegation with the use of a teaspoon, little by little. You've got to love that. We all live for that kind of reporting, I'd argue. In fact, I'll argue with anybody for any reason, but that's a completely different story. Now for the best of the rest. Valencia won their city derby with an absolute beauty of an overhead kick. It's that kind of weekend by Hugo Duro. The two coaches had a bit of a dust-up at the end, and Julian Calero's Levante are now 5 without a win. But Mestalla loves Los Che again. Atleti won their city derby, turning up at the Alfonso Perez Coliseum and turning over Getafe on Sunday. The first of the weekend's backheel goals was an own goal from Duarte, losing Getafe the 3 points. Painful for him and his team to watch again, but both funny and truly beautiful for the rest of us. Go find it. La Real up at Anoeta keep coming, but this time 1-0 down against Osasuna away and then 3-1 up. And never mind Trent Alexander-Arnold, Lewis Miles Skelly, Nigel Rio-Coker or Alex Oxlade-Chamber. Ander, Kenny McLean-Barrenechea slapped in the goal of the weekend, perhaps the goal of the season, lobbing the loathsome Sergio Herrera and the Osasuna goal from the halfway line, McLean-styley with plenty of Irie. Villarreal keep in touch at the top, very close, 2 points, with the latest 2-1 win over Mallorca thanks to their Canadian striker Tani Oluwaseyi, backheeling the ball right on the goal line after a beautiful assist from Mallorca captain Antonio Rayo, who left Tejon Buchanan's right wing cross just lying there, 6 millimetres from the white line. Them's the breaks, dudes. The Canadian Mounties always get their man, and their late goal too. By the way, Moreno got his 4th in 4 games. That's in fact 4 in 265 minutes, which means a goal every 66 minutes from Gerard Moreno. The captain, fantastic. Moreover, Villarreal have now registered 29 points out of a possible 39 in their opening 13 games, their best start in their 83-year history. But they're 32nd in the Champions League with 1 point, having stunk the house out in Europe, and their visit to Dortmund this week has the stench of all or nothing. So all hands on deck, please, for the Yellow Submarine. Oviedo and Rayo don't judge a book by the cover. It was 0-0, but by God, 2 red cards, a saved penalty, Santi Cazorla at about, I think he's 62 now, smacking the ball off the bar with a beautiful free kick. Points shared. Tonight I'll be working. If you're tuning into Premier or wherever you get your Spanish football, I'll be working with Pete Jensen on Espanyol against Sevilla. I will see you there. For the meantime, don't only stay tuned, make yourself a socio. We can't survive without your support. Please just go to the description, fork out £3.99 a month or 30 quid, which will take you all the way through to July with coverage of every competition Spanish teams are involved in, plus laughs and songs along the way. You know it makes sense. Please, I mean it, come and support us. Stay tuned.